Call the Board of Finance meeting to order at 8:30 on Tuesday, May 14th. Our chair is out of town, so he asked me to be acting chair. On our agenda, we have to approve the minutes of the April 24th public hearing. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second? Okay, any discussion, correction? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I abstain.
Okay. The April 24th, 2013 special meeting, a
So
motion?
moved.
Second, do I hear?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Any corrections? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And abstain.
Okay, passes. Okay, discuss results of referendum. Kevin, you want to give us a
Sure.
brief?
There were 3 questions on the ballot tonight. None of them were capital questions. The first question dealt with the Board of Selectmen operating budget. There was a total turnout of 1,187 voters. If I'm not mistaken, that's somewhere around 7% of the electorate, or registered voters, excuse me. On the issue of question 1, the Board of Selectmen budget, the yeses were 865, the nays were 318. That constitutes a 73% plurality. On question 2, which is the Board of Education operating budget, the yeas were 807, the noes were 380. That constitutes a 68% plurality in favor of the question. And finally, on question 3, which is all of the rest of the operating budgets, including the likes of the sewer use fund, et cetera, the results were 886 yay, 297 no, for a plurality in favor of passage of 75%.
Okay, that's good. All right, I guess we'll move on to the mill rate consideration. I think in our package we have a mill rate worksheet here. Does everyone have that? Jeff? Now, the old mill rate was 31.37?
Correct.
Okay. And as a result of revaluation, we have an increase to offset revaluation. And that it appears on the worksheet that the appropriation increase is only 1.94%, but there's a slight decrease in indirect or other revenues, which make that about, I think, a 2.25% between the two.
Correct.
Does that sound reasonable? To get there, the mill rate has to be, I believe, 37.29. Everyone read it that way? Nick, you on board? Everyone? Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes. Mill rate's 37.29.
Can, for the record, we also have just understanding that, if I understand, Kevin, the fire district is coming
Sure,
at
I can
1.22.
report on that. The fire district held its annual meeting last night. We were proposing a budget which anticipated or sought approval for a 1.5% overall expense increase. It was unanimously approved, and therefore a mill rate of 1.22 was adopted for the fire district, which represents an increase of from 1.03 to 1.22, but in the end, the magnitude of the mill rate increase is exaggerated by the decline in the grand list that occurred during reval. And so the real, I think, number to look at is that all things being equal, if there had been no reval, the mill rate and the tax increase would have been identical, namely 1.5%. So the mill rate is 1.22. It was unanimously adopted at the annual meeting.
And putting the two of them together, we'd be at 38.51 mils.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 38.51.
That's the best I've got.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if this is going to get reported, I'd like to make sure that,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
that taxpayers are not misled by thinking that, you know, it's 37.29.
No,
but they have to
absolutely.
put the two of them together.
I mean, I agree with you, Nick, and frankly, I think with the taxpayers and what I hope the coverage of our deliberations and tonight's results actually reflect is that the grand list went down by 15%. So even before the budget season started, presupposing that it didn't occur at the same time, the mill rate had to go up 15% just to produce the same amount of revenue.
Actually, 17.
Yeah, well, yes, absolutely. So, subtract 17% from whatever the computed mill rate increase is, and delta is really reflects the change in expenses.
Yeah, but for the record, what I want an understanding is that the combined mill rate is going to be 38.51 mils.
Absolutely.
Correct. And we told them that there's the tax calculator on the, if you go on the tax collector's webpage, and you can put in the full mill rate, and figure it out.
With your new assessment?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
While we're on the subject, Colleen, do you have some idea as to when the tax bills will actually be sent out?
They don't
I know
get
it's
sent
not
out.
your job, but
Right, they get sent out the last week in June. So whatever, usually like that Thursday before the weekend. you know,
Yep.
I'm just trying to avoid surprises.
Now, one other thing I noticed in here, there's, in tax relief programs, we have a total of $415,000. So it looks like more people are taking advantage of the elderly tax relief.
Yes, correct.
So, and then between, you have the elderly tax relief, the volunteer fire ambulance relief, and the business development abatements. So
I
the
don't think we have anybody on the business abatement anymore this year.
Okay. We have some applications pending that.
You do have, but will they be in for this July? I don't-
There's a meeting next week.
Because I think last year we finished, so we're ready.
Gotcha. Okay.
On the fire district, I just have a quick question. Are those meetings televised on SCTV?
No.
Typically not. So just thinking, since this one is, it might be useful to the viewing public just to understand kind of what were the main drivers of the 1.5% increase?
Decrease in
Trying to recall what the major drivers were, because there were two large increases. One of them is presumably temporary measures in that one of our full-time dispatchers has announced her retirement. And given the fact that we don't have any redundancy, we put something in the order of, I think it was $30,000 in the budget, round numbers, to provide for duplicate dispatch time and the replacement dispatcher hasn't been identified, but duplicate dispatch time where essentially one of our existing dispatchers would essentially co-pilot while this new person was being trained. And then we put, and so that was roughly 70% of our overall increase, which was about $46,000. And the other major...
Some of that was overtime too, because all the other dispatchers were going to have to make up.
That explains everything.
Yeah.
It's all in the dispatch, change of dispatch. So there are, that $30,000 or so that's extra in the budget would arguably disappear next year in terms of a recurring expense. And then there was somewhere in the order of $8,000 to $10,000 that reflected a change in the service recognition program. And the other was just all minor ups and downs. The capital allocation for the year was down significantly, and off the top of my head, I can't tell you the number anymore, because I have numbers swimming in my head, but those are the general drivers.
Okay, so with mill rate set, move on to the suspense list.
Peter, can I just add one more
Sure.
thing? Just for clarity, for reporting this, we were provided the restated mill rate with the new grand list, so if we were in last year's level, so we could understand how many points of the increase were just due to the reval, and I think that's important to know too. This is the town side only. I don't have the numbers for the fire district, but for the town side only, 5.1 points of the mill rate increase are just due to reval, which is the 17% that he was talking about earlier, but it's worth 5.1 points of the mill rate change.
What percentage?
He said 17.
Well, I was giving a rough number, but I mean, if the
Yeah.
average valuation of a home goes down 15%, to get back to where you were to be even, it'd be about a 17% increase in the mill rate.
Right, I agree.
I think the increase here, I think we have is .82 is the actual, as a result of expenditures and decrease in revenue, so that, the mill rate went up 5.92, so it'd be about 5.1.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
5.1.
5.1
Exactly.
is the result of reval.
And if that math followed over into the fire district, there would be no tax increase.
Right.
Right.
Because
Okay.
that same 17% explains the delta between 1.03 and 1.22.
In other words, your increase runs to zero.
There were expense increases, but there were also decreases. But the $46,000 absolute increase was not sufficient to drive a tax increase. A full 100th of a mil.
Right.
On the suspense list, Colleen provided us with a suspense list in our package, which we have to transfer every year. And these are items, Colleen, you want to give us a quick update on, there's two types of items in here, I believe?
Yes, they're motor vehicle and business personal property.
Right.
Some of these, I hadn't put in the past, like these are on the cars, goes back to '98. Obviously, these people have had to register since then. So either they've learned how to work the system and registering under different name, or leasing a car and not registering in their name, or gone and we can't find them. I can tell you the first three, the 98, 99, and 2000, 2001, and both of the 2000, the 300, 2004 are still there. How they're registering, I have no idea. Well, what I know is the name change.
So a question for Colleen.
Yeah.
The fact that we would put this in suspense does not mean that collection efforts cease.
Oh, absolutely
It just
not. What I
means
do
that
now,
it's
I give
your
these-
judgment and a
Right.
recommendation to the
Right.
Board of Finance that this is probably not collectible.
Exactly, right.
So I'd like to move, I'd like to move approval of the tax collector's recommended suspense list in the total amount of $71,860.97.
Second, all right. Any discussion?
Colleen, at this point, you do go out to collect tax collectors or
At-
collection agencies?
At this point, I give it now to the state marshal, all of the expense list, and
Suspense.
the suspense list, and he then sends letters to them. And these people have probably received over the years 25, 30 letters from me.
But are you sending out just the 2010?
Oh, they're getting everything.
So they get it over and over again?
He gets the whole list, yes. He gets the whole list and works on it,
Okay.
yeah.
How does money work for that? If he collects,
It doesn't cost the town a penny. He gets 15% of whatever he collects. Anything under $200, he gets $30. But he gets 15% on whatever he collects. That's what he makes his money.
But to
Doesn't
the
cost
extent
town a
this is
penny.
no longer receivable by virtue of an
Exactly.
approval tonight,
Right.
then anything that comes in is deemed gravy,
Newfound
Exactly.
so to speak.
Exactly, right,
Inartful word.
yeah. And
Okay.
Peter, can you sign this for Paul, or who?
Yeah.
If you want, yeah.
Okay.
It's a relatively small amount.
Okay.
Relative to, I'm sure, other communities whose tax collection rate is
Yeah.
not anywhere close to
Well, I
99.
don't even think
Different
that's
communities
not
play
even
with it.
relevant.
No, it's speculative.
No, it's, well, it's not speculative.
Well,
It's
some people, how they can get their collection rate higher, so they throw more in suspense.
Sure.
So, and some of them throw the current year in.
Yeah.
A group are throwing the current year cars in right now, so it looks like their collection rate is a little bit better.
All right, pension update. We
We
have,
need to act on the motion.
oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Didn't we vote on it?
No.
No, it's first and second.
I'm sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Pension update. We have in our package quarterly results. No one's here to do a presentation. I don't know if you read through it, but my quick reading of it, it looked like for the quarter, we were basically up 5%. So that was good. We're up, and I assume we're up since then even more. And it didn't look like they required any action in there as far as they had recommendation of managers. They were keeping them all
Well,
out.
Peter, I think that the key issue is that The pension committee met last week.
Mhm.
We did not have a quorum. FIA came to us with a recommendation that as we try to exit, and in fact, we have now exited from the Russell Real Estate Investment Trust, FIA is recommending, since there is a queue to get into the real estate vehicle that they're recommending, Cornerstone, they're recommending that for the time being that we put the monies with Vanguard in essentially a fairly liquid real estate investment fund that Vanguard runs.
That's the Vanguard REIT Index Fund?
That's correct. And this board, I think, should take action to approve that because, as I say, the pension committee could not take action last week.
No question.
Mr.
So,
North.
as one of our representatives, Nick, to the pension committee, does the pension committee have authority to approve new investment alternatives solely?
We would have made a recommendation effectively to the board of
I
selectmen.
understand. I'm just trying to understand what the necessary motion is tonight, because the memo doesn't
I
make it
understand.
clear, and I think I know what the motion needs to be based on what
Okay.
you just said.
Okay. You want to make a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion that, in light of the decision to exit the Frank Russell Real Estate Index Fund, Real Estate Fund, excuse me, I recommend that the Vanguard REIT Index Fund, as well as the Cornerstone, what is it? Patriot Fund, be approved as real estate investment options for the town's pension assets.
Second.
A little more discussion. FIA was suggesting that we effectively move as soon as we can from the Russell Fund over into the Cornerstone Fund. Because the Cornerstone Fund has the same illiquidity aspects as the Russell Fund. I mean, it's taken us 5 years to get out of the Russell Fund now. It was the sentiment of the pension committee that FIA keeps some portion in the Vanguard Fund at all times in order to provide some liquidity if we needed it.
Right, but we just have to set up the fund so that you have the ability to maneuver, and that's what we're doing tonight.
Now, the second point I think that needs to be made is the amount of money that FIA is suggesting that we put into either of these funds now is net of the amount that the town would need for liquidity purposes. Mary Ann, over the next quarter?
Yes, to pay the retiree benefits.
Yeah. So we're netting out a little bit. We're not taking everything out of the Frank Russell Fund and putting it over into the Cornerstone Fund as soon as we can.
Frank
But just-
Russell is out.
But just to be clear, as I understand it from the original investment policy statement, the goal is to have 5% plus or minus
That is correct.
invested in real estate assets.
Yeah.
And
I
and
think
so we're still pursuing that regardless of operational.
that is correct, but I think
Details.
this recommendation would move us to get to about a 3%
Yeah.
allocation at this point in time.
Right. Does everyone understand the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, I think, our-
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure.
I'll second.
Okay.
Oh, you seconded
Nick
it before
Yeah.
he finished making it.
Okay, Nick, okay,
Put me down, Susan.
got it.
that is the end of our agenda items, so this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Wow.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.